Well, my next guest is someone who will be familiar to almost every single viewer of the Aussie Wire. It is Dr. Peter Ridd, very well known for his stance for speaking up for truth in science. And there are some home truths that have come out quite recently in the area of nuclear energy. Dr. Peter Ridd joins us now. Peter, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Now, you draw this story to my attention, actually, thanks to your Twitter account. I recommend everyone go and follow Peter on Twitter, or X as it's known these days. But you were drawing attention to a recent poll that is showing incredible support for nuclear power, particularly amongst younger people. Talk us through what that said.
Yeah, there's a poll looking at whether we should put small nuclear reactors in the sites of coal power stations, and a huge majority of young people, between 18 and 24, over 60% are actually in favour, and a relatively small number against. Overall, the general population, just looking at the numbers, 55% approve and only 31% disapprove. So
Wow.
a very strong majority. And even the Greens are 53% in favour of nuclear and
Wow.
31% against. The only demographic that's actually a bit sitting on the border is the females, which are 41% in favour and 30% against, with 21% sitting on the fence.
Mm.
So you can see that this is quite a remarkable statistic, in the sense that people want nuclear power, or at least they want us to look at nuclear power instead of these terrible windmills that we're building at the moment.
Well, there's a nuance in this data that I noticed that caught my attention, and that was that this poll was around small modular reactors specifically, and that is a subset of nuclear technology.
Yep.
A lot of people object and say this is unproven, that it really hasn't been established around the world that we can really manufacture these things off the production line the way that people are kind of hyping them. What's your response to that criticism for the small modular reactors specifically?
Well, there's a degree of truth in that. It's not like as though small nuclear reactors haven't been around. That's what's in every nuclear submarine, and we're supposedly buying half a dozen of those. And they've been around since the 1950s or 60s. So it's not entirely unproven technology, but can we get them on a production line, make them hundreds at a time, because these would be going across all of the world?
Mm.
No, we haven't proven that. But what we have proven is that windmills won't do the job. So I'd much rather spend a few $billion trying to prove that technology and see whether it's going to work, than go for a technology which we ultimately know won't do the job, which is to give stable power all the time, basically.
Well, what we do know works, and it's working all around the world, and in fact we're seeing a lot of what had been mothballed nuclear reactors getting started back up again. We know that these large-scale, bespoke installation nuclear reactors do work. They're providing power all over the world. It's the safest power that the human race has ever had access to in its entire existence. So my question would be, why do we need to have a conversation about small modular reactors? Couldn't we have a conversation about just bringing in some of these companies that know how to build large-scale nuclear reactors and just get the job done?
Look, I entirely agree. I mean, that's not what the poll was about. It was
Sure.
about small nuclear reactors. But I think it'd be safe to say that there'd be a majority of people who would at least contemplate the possibility of larger nuclear reactors. I mean, if you can have a small nuclear reactor, why 10 little ones or one big one? Why not go for one big one, sort of thing?
Mm.
What it's shown is that there's been a complete change in the opinion of people about nuclear. They do regard it as an alternative to the unreliable renewables. And I think that Peter Dutton's actually on a winner. If he's very sensible about it, says we've just got to look at this, we've got to do our sums, find out whether there's places that would actually like it. And I think that there would be. You're seeing in Sweden, for example, that there was a place there that wanted the nuclear waste repository. They actually wanted it.
Yeah.
Because they can see that this is actually, the amount of waste is very small, and they're very safe facilities.
So this debate's been raging for most of my life. I can remember as a teenager, probably about 15 years of age, people saying, oh, there's no point going for nuclear, and obviously you would have to repeal the federal ban and various other things like that, but there's no point because it'll take 20 years to build. I can't help but reflecting on the fact that if we'd just got on with it 25 years ago, then we wouldn't even be having this conversation now.
Well, that's true. But the reason it takes 20 years to build one of these things isn't because it takes 20 years to build. It's because it takes 15 years to actually get the planning and all the politics and all the rubbish that is associated with nuclear. If you just decided we're going to do this, the French built, I've forgotten the numbers, but maybe 50 nuclear reactors over a couple of decades. They just went in there and they did it. They didn't mess around. And we could do that if we want to. Even if you went for a big nuclear reactor, you get one that's already been built many times by maybe the Koreans or even the Chinese, and you just go ahead and you build half a dozen of them.
Well, it strikes me actually now that you mentioned that we're seeing all of these windmills popping up. I drive around my local area. I've moved out of the big cities, and I don't have to drive very far before I'm going past a vast solar farm that's sitting on top of
Yep.
prime farmland. There are, of course, the walking man poles going up over farmland all over this country. That seems to be happening very quickly. And you've kind of triggered in me a thought, because what happened to the environmental approvals and the 10 years of wrangling and everything for those? How are they getting approved so fast?
Exactly. I mean, in North Queensland here, there's two just appalling wind farms proposed, one at Mount Fox and one at Chalumbin. And the roads and the power lines and the desecration of really quite staggeringly beautiful scrub, and they just can do it. No problems at all. Well, we'll put a nuclear reactor on the footprint of a coal power station that you might be wanting to decommission, and which, by the way, I would not necessarily want to decommission it, but you
Sure.
could if you wanted to, or put one next to it, and essentially no extra environmental footprint whatsoever, because there's already a power station there.
Well, I've got to say this is a thorn in my side. It's a frustration for me, but this poll that you brought to my attention, I'm so glad you did, is a ray of sunshine, a little bit of hope. It does seem that younger people are coming on board the idea that this might actually hold some answers for us. Dr. Peter Ridd, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Aussie Wire.
Thanks very much. And by the way, it was on my Facebook account, not Twitter, so
Excuse
just
me,
a
on
little bit of a
Facebook.
correction.
All the best.
Thanks very much, Topher.